during the pandemic. It was not to engage my students, not to make learning real and relevant. It was really to foster relationships with my students, which is in many cases one of the most fulfilling parts of being a teacher. And it comes before anything. Students don't really care what you know before they know that you care. That's a phrase that we perhaps hear all the time, that I've heard all the time, but really rings true and is reality. And so, yeah, similar to what was shared, like, you know, I got unfortunately very comfortable speaking to an empty screen, not a screen like what we see right now with lovely smiling faces, but an empty screen. And it was really a challenge, especially in a school where the culture, there's a very big focus on personal freedom. If students want to turn on their cameras, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. I get that. I understand that. I respect that to some degree, but in some respects, if you want to build relationships, you have to force interaction. I always talk about that in my classroom. Now that we're back in person, I stand in front of the door. I make my students say hello to me. I make them tell me something about themselves or what they're doing over the weekend before they come in or before they leave at the end of the day. And sometimes they don't appreciate, well, sometimes they try to swerve around that or to get around that. But in forcing that interaction, they do really appreciate it. I can see smiles on their faces. And I'm glad that I forced that interaction, and they are as well. And that's necessary. But when you're speaking through a computer, it's very, very difficult to force those interactions that like really foster relationships. So probably the thing that we did most successful was I got to meet students' parents, siblings, pets from home. And we had to come up with like really fun ways to convince students to turn their cameras on, whether it's like playing literal like rock, paper, scissors games where you have to have your camera on to play, which was a lot of fun. So there are creative ways to get students to put their cameras on, to pick like funny backgrounds and talk about that with one another. We did like virtual show and tell. Like we had students like, you're in your house, show me like an object that's important to you, that connects to your family's personal story or culture, and to share that with one another. So those opportunities were actually unique, and I think in some respects are harder to replicate in person. I can get my students more comfortable sharing an object in their house while they're at home during remote learning than to actually do that in school and to stand up in front of their classes. We also had students connected to civic engagement speak to large groups of students. Like we're involved in like public speaking and debate programs as well. And so to convince a student in front of their computer at home to speak to thousands of people or hundreds of people, how many are in this, right? Hundreds of people. Students have more confidence to do this. How many of you would be speaking right now if this event was in person? What would be your demeanor? How would you feel if we were all in person? It would be great, right? But there would be a lot of hesitancy on your part. So I think that connects to students as well. Like students can reach a large audience. They can have more confidence to do that if it's done online. So I think it's important to consider these things as well. Like there are real advantages. Like the technology could be used in meaningful ways as we go back to school in person. Like those things need to continue and really like ratchet up and build on one another. And if the workplace is finding ways to succeed in continuing to work remotely and use the technology, schools need to do that as well. Schools need to transform. They can't be doing things in the same way that they were for hundreds of years. When I was in India, I think the thing that resonated with me the most, that like really like when I think of like what does education in India mean to me as an American, it's morning assembly. I've never seen anything like that before. It was so powerful. Students took ownership over it. There was such a sense of community. And I was thinking during the pandemic, oh my God, what does education in India look like during remote learning when like an event like that can't, or it could exist. I think that there's ways, I hope it has existed in some way, shape, or form. That's actually something that I'm most interested in learning about from all of you, is like such a powerful grounding experience for students that give them ownership and a sense of community in school. Like
David,
what does that look like during remote learning, and how could something like that continue?
David, may I intervene? I think you will exhaust all our questions before we even ask them.
Yes, exactly. I was also thinking the same. He is giving all the answers I had to ask.
So David, Mamta, can you take next question? I've learned that
So
you
it's
have.
it's not about the answer. It's the smart question. That's why item writing workshops, David, you've touched the chord when you said that we miss the students, and till the time we care for them, they do not bother about us. So just as the schools have reopened, the exact parallel I could find when you said that you stand at the door of your classroom, I stand at the entry gate of my school in the morning, and make that every child walking into the school smiles and greets, and I greet them too. In fact, I greet them and they reciprocate. And yes, about the morning assemblies, we were missing them, but not at all. Like, it didn't go away. We came out with ways. We were celebrating days and events online. And the way you said, at times children were more comfortable performing before a screen rather than have to perform in the class. They were comfortable at times with all their constraints. They did participate. We could carry on with most of our curricular activities even during pandemic. In fact, these activities are the ones that they sustained us. Just as you said, in the academic classes, they would be there, sign off their initials and put off their cameras and might go away at times. But yes, in such events, they were online with their cameras on all the time. But now,
Mamta,
yes.
so I would want to intervene.
Sure.
We have with us our director, education, who has envisioned this all program, and we want him to share his visions and path ahead. Director, sir, please.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate our Fulbright scholars for organizing such a wonderful program where you have, you can discuss and ideate on a lot of things and issues that are common across the globe. And perhaps COVID, as we all know, was one such issue that, has taken education on a very different path that is generally adopted. Like offline classes have been replaced with online classes to a lot extent, and we have to work out ways how we can make online classes very engaging for our students. And I think in our directorate also, many teachers have adopted very unique ways to interact with students online. And in fact, I had also, I had the opportunity to online go through some of the classes, and I found out that many of the teachers are preparing very innovative assignments and they are redoing their assignment, they are redoing their entire pedagogy in a way that it becomes very innovative and interesting for the students. And a lot of group discussions also, and a lot of group activities are also being done online. So one thing that I would like to congratulate everyone is that, with the advent of this technology and with online classes, a lot of teachers have used unique and innovative ways. Apart from this, the reason why this program, this FANS program, and the lectures are being designed is that I was being told that many countries and many cities and schools have a lot of unique and innovative initiatives that can be replicated across the globe. Like in US, like I have teachers from New York, I believe New York City. So a lot of innovative activities might be going in your city, in your school, which we would like to know, so that in India, in Delhi, we can also replicate. Similarly, a lot of new and unique initiatives are being taken in Delhi government. For example, we are having happiness curriculum. We are having, Desh Bhakti curriculum. So these are some things which we can share with other parts of the world. So the idea of having such sort of interaction is that we share what is there, what is new, what is unique, and what best, is going on in education system in various parts of the world, and we try to replicate them, collaborate, so that best possible education can be provided to our students. So with this, I congratulate once again the fans team and the Fulbright scholars of Delhi government, who have of DOE, who have organized this lecture series, and I'm sure that we will be organizing more such interactive sessions. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mamtaji. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was an honor and privilege to have you, but we owe it all to you. It is all because of us that we've been able to organize this event. Now we'd like you to have a look at the glimpses of the visits of these two cohorts of the Teachers for Global Classrooms when they were here with us in the years 2018 and 19. We have prepared a short presentation with the memories of those days. If you permit, we'll move ahead with that.
Yeah.
I'm
Please
sharing
go.
it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rajesh.
Hi, wasn't that nostalgic?
We'd like to hear from our friends.
Brian.
I miss you guys.
We miss you too, and how we are missing Sonia today.
Yes.
Yeah. So, with the words of our director, sir, um, we have with us our principal advisor to the Delhi government on education, Sri Shailendraji, and he wants to speak to us all. So let's invite him. Sri Shailendra, sir.
Thank you, Rajesh. It's great to see all of you. And please bear the background noise or the sound because I'm standing in front of a banquet hall where we have just reached to attend a wedding of one of our colleagues. So I thought before entering the wedding sessions, maybe I can quickly interact with all of you. It's great to see all of you here and maintaining this connect that you established a couple of years back. And I think that's the greatest part. And I could see the photo, the slides, and some familiar faces in that. That there has been such a great learning opportunities for all of you, and sharing those things. And I was hearing to some of the experiences that you all was sharing about your experience in in the schools of the US, particularly David, you. And I found particularly your statement very interesting when you said that perhaps when the school closed due to pandemic, we were trying to replicate the old model. And this is a great thought. This is a great idea, because for the last decade or so in the education policy circle, there has been a lot of debate, discussion about how we transform ourselves, how we reinvent ourselves in the midst of changing times. But except for few individual efforts, we don't really see much of the things changing in the classrooms. The interaction between student and teachers, the role of textbooks, the role of different activities that is conducted. And I think in that regard, pandemic has been a blessing in disguise. That all of us were forced to think how to engage with our student, what is meaningful, what is needed as we move ahead. So I think it is a I think this platform would serve more deeper purpose if we were to start thinking about the takeaways that we had, the learnings during this period, what all we got to know, and how we can apply in the change situations, because children are also coming up with a very different experience, with a very different experience of learning. And it is very clear that the teachers, textbooks are not anymore the only source of learning for children. So there are many other avenues that they have learned to explore, how we as teachers, educators can build upon that. So I think that is an idea I leave with you to explore further and give us inputs. We in Delhi are ready to implement new ideas. Mamta, right in the beginning, said that today we launched new classrooms. Now we are looking for new ideas to be used in those classrooms, and we would love to be enriched by your experience. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you, sir,
Thank you.
for being so motivating. And we'll surely try to engage ourselves, and engagement leading to empowerment and helping our children at the end being our sole aim. And that's exactly what, as David said, these days, after the reopening of schools, we are working on only the psychological safety. We are bothered about the care that we can give to the child, the connect we can establish so that that mindset is there. We are concerned about the intent, what we want to give to the child. It's not the content that we are giving, it is the purpose of the education that is being looked upon by the various curriculums that we are following in our classrooms. Could we hear from Seth how things have changed in the classrooms after the pandemic? Seth, if you could talk about your classroom.
Yeah, remind me the question.
What change do you find in your classroom after the schools have reopened?
Thank you. I definitely say it's the confidence that has diminished among many of my students. The confidence to take a risk, to speak, to investigate in the science classroom that I've curated over the years. It's focused a great deal on student empowerment to perform investigations, and science is so much about learning about the world that you're in. I find that the year of the pandemic has really put students into a mindset where they're more comfortable receiving and less motivated and less courageous to go out and explore. So I've had to figure out, and I and other teachers have had to figure out little small steps to take for students along the journey so that they don't have to go outside all by themselves, but they have what we call little supports. We sometimes call it a scaffold because a scaffold helps hold up a large, heavy structure. So we build a small scaffold for our students so they can help be supported to perform the small risks, the small investigations, and the tiny acts of courage that it takes to really learn major important concepts. We've leaned a lot on the internet. We recognize that every student walks around with a handheld laboratory in their hand. So we say, instead of telling them, put it away, we say, this is a sophisticated piece of scientific equipment. We want you to use this sophisticated piece of equipment to learn about your world. So we've found various applications and various websites to support students that allow them to use what they come into the classroom with instead of put away and hide their advantage in the world.
Yeah, thank you, Sid. That was an insight. May I request Robin to please share about her experience after the reopening of schools?
It's funny that we are talking about this now because, as I mentioned before, yesterday was our first day without masks. So the governor had released that requirement. What I found interesting is how many students did not want to take their masks off. I would say the majority. I found that fascinating. I walked into the library first thing yesterday morning, just really happy. I had no mask on. There were 40 people in the library, all masked. I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to double check. But I think for some of them, and I've asked a lot of them why they're doing that, they found the masks comfortable. It helps them with their ability to handle school in this difficult time. They've just gotten used to it, and they feel a little exposed, to their word, without it. So that's one of the surprises that I've experienced very recently. It's the coming back has been difficult. It's been a very challenging thing because there's so many students who still, for instance, will test positive for COVID and have to be gone for a week or so. So you've got a constant in and out of students all the time. I'm not sure if the other states have experienced that, but we certainly have. Their mental health, I would say, has taken a hit, and we're trying really, really hard. We have a new initiative where if any student shows some sort of sign of needing some additional care, all teachers provide reports and recommendations, and so it's no longer just about students requiring IEPs or any sort of learning help. It's now about mental health. So that seems to be working very well. It requires a lot of one-on-one effort. We'll get there.
Thank you,
Ruben.
I can see a
so-
few hands up. If they have something to ask Ruben, they may please go ahead. Dr. Anil Kumar, Head of School from a School in Directorate of Education, please.
My question from Robin is that did you face any problem of disinterest of student during the online classes? And if you face disinterest, then what is your strategy for to deal with that?
I'm going to need the question repeated for me.
Can I explain,
This is
Ruben?
for me.
Yeah, he asked that did you face any problem like disinterestedness among children when you took online classes? And if yes, then what would be your strategies to deal with those disinterested faces?
Okay, so I teach mostly 10th graders. So that would be 15, 16-year-old students. I have some a little bit older, but none younger. So we realized that the last traditional year that they were in school was when they were 7th graders, the very last time that there was no impact. So that what we've seen is just a real obvious lack of, or I guess, arrested maturity. I'm going to put it that way. So they haven't had a chance to interact with other students as they have before. And they're really a little bit like timid wild animals, sometimes just sort of going within rather than coming out. So that's the challenge, is really trying to get them to engage more and not just get locked up in their own world as they've been doing, frankly, for 2 years.
2 years. Thank you, Robin. I think that would help Dr. Anil. I can see another hand. Ruchi, if you have a question for Robin only, we'll go ahead right away.
Ma'am, actually, I just wanted to ask from David sir that Jo Beth ma'am, she has said that she has seen the students respecting teachers in India. You know? So what are the qualities of the US teacher except the tech savvy? Because they are obviously more tech savvy than our Indians. So what is the another thing which they are using more better than any other in the world? Means what practices they are using, which we can also use to enhance the betterment of the teaching and for our students also.
Okay, so your question is addressed to Dr. Jo.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please, Jo.
She has actually mentioned it in the chat box that she liked that the students in India respects teachers very much. Yes, actually it is. That they respect us as their second mother. Yeah. And what is the qualities of their teaching?
Can you hear me
Jo,
if I speak? Can you hear me?
Sorry,
No,
no.
network is still
I
bad
think
on
we'll
your
have to
side.
continue with you in the chat box only.
Okay.
Jo.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You can answer in the chat box also. Yeah.
So, Ruben, can you take that question while Jo is typing her response?
Could we have it repeated one more time? There's a little break up here.
Please
Her
repeat her
question was that Jo has remarked, she observed that Indian students really respect their teachers. So do you find similar situation in the US, or is there any other noticeable thing that you noticed which was different between your classroom and ours? A distinct feature.
It's a great question, and I appreciate that. We do have in my school anyway a rather liberal policy on the use of cell phones, and that's one of the things that's keeping them from interacting. I would say I would agree with that. That's one of the things I was really so amazed to see is the level of respect and engagement from the Indian students that I interacted with, recognizing that I know that we were from someplace else. We were a little bit glamorous, perhaps, but just their interest and almost to a student. And I imagine that if it was reversed and you came to visit my classroom, there would be a fair amount of shyness on the part of my 15-year-olds, although I think the 18-year-olds would be very engaging and very interested in what you would have to say. Again, this all has to do with that arrested maturity that they've experienced since they've really not engaged with many people other than their own families for quite some time.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. So,
And I
have a-
will have to leave at
Yeah,
this
sure.
point. I have a workshop to go to. I put the information in the chat box. If anyone wants to contact me, I would welcome that and look forward to that. Have a wonderful time on this Zoom. It was great to see everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ruben.
Ruben, for
Thanks
taking
for-
up time while you were still busy. When you sent me the chat first that you have an engagement, and I requested you, and you hold on to it. You held on to it, so I really appreciate that you appeared on this platform. Thank you, Ruben. Please enjoy your day.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Ruben. Thank you.
Rajesh. Take care.
So, Mamta, do you have another question, or should I pop up one?
I have, but I can see a few more hands. If we could take another question. We have Anjana Soni with her hand raised. If we could have her question, and then I put forth mine.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Anjana Soni. I'm a maths teacher. I have been teaching maths from classes 6 to 10. My question is somewhat extension of Ruchi's question, as she was speaking about the skills that we could, or any technologies that the foreign teachers have been using or other countries, and we don't have the knowledge about that things. So I wish to know the suggestions about the short-term courses, whether offline or maybe online, run by the foreign universities or US universities that can be used for enhancing and defining the professional skills of teachers.
I think Seth should take this question. Okay, David, please be in the queue.
So as a science teacher who loves what's called professional development, and I think Anjanaji, you're describing exactly that, the professional development when you work with other teachers to improve your skills, but it's not just that you're receiving, you're collaborating with other teachers so they can all, as peers, as professionals, improve their takeaway, their abilities in the classroom. I've performed in a lot of professional development experiences, and I am very surprised that in many of them, there are teachers from other countries who came in. I went to an experience in Washington State in the city of Seattle, and there were teachers from Singapore who were there, and they said, oh, this is a very valuable experience. We will come from across the world for this. There are some benefits, however, as I think it was mentioned earlier by another education professional on this Zoom, there's a hidden benefit in some of the pandemic, because many of the professional development experiences we cannot do in person during the time of the pandemic. So many organizations put their professional development on Zoom, on the internet, and they adapted. And now they could invite teachers from another state, from another country, from another part of the world, if you can organize your schedule to attend in the middle of the night, to do these types of things. So there are definitely experiences out there for either zero cost or low cost. There are more experiences than they were before, and we can definitely begin a conversation of what are the needs, what are the expectations, and importantly, since in New Delhi and perhaps Mumbai or other places, teachers can actually work together, we can only speak to the benefits and the methods of our specific programs that we describe, but we anticipate that if there's a cohort, if there's a group of teachers from the same city, wherever that is, London or Berlin, whatever, who want to work together, they can attend a workshop together, and then they can meet together locally in their city to say, how can we finish the marathon? How can we get we got almost all of it during the workshop, but let's get the last adaptation specific to our to our environment, let's adjust and implement over here. So I'm sure I and others would be open to making the connection to workshops online, and then also building the smaller communities whether it's in the school or in the school district, or at least in the city, so that teachers from other places can say, that makes a lot of sense, but let's do that last piece to adapt for our specific students so that we can really make this connection for our population.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
David.
Thank you.
Yeah, David, please come up.
You think by now I would have figured out how to use the virtual hand, but I haven't. That is a technical challenge, which is something I wanted to talk about a little bit. So when I was in India teaching in Kerala with my co-teacher Les, like one of the things that we did was we delivered professional development. What we were asked to do, not surprisingly, was, what are the technologies? What are the technologies that we could use with our students? This was before the pandemic. This was hopefully trying to get teachers to implement some of this stuff prior to remote learning, before any of us heard about COVID-19. And I hope to some degree that was helpful and meaningful. At the same time, this is a question that we get a lot. I get a question like very often about what technologies are most helpful, like what should we be doing to like advance learning for our students, online, or like transitioning back to in person. The thing is, I don't think that this is a technical challenge. I think of it as more as an adaptive challenge. The technologies that have been most meaningful for extending my students' learning, making learning real, relevant, rigorous, relationship-oriented, and connected to the 21st century are the things that we're most familiar with using. Google Maps, email, the internet. It's just a matter of how we use it. It's the premise of what education is, in terms of like, I have students literally calling their city council members in class, or emailing their city council members in class to advocate for change and things that they want to see, like using these tools that we use every day in our personal lives to advance their learning and the meaning of school, in terms of what it means to be in school, which is to accomplish things that extend beyond the classroom into the real world. Like, okay, we have lead in our drinking water in our school. There's other schools in New York City, around the country, that have that same problem. Let's map it. Let's use Google Maps and drop pins with all the schools that tested for elevated lead levels above 15 parts per billion. Like, students already know how to do these things. Teachers already know, they have the tools and they're familiar with the tools of how to do these things. They're just not doing it in school, because that is not the traditional premise of like what they do in school. Daddy, yes, my love. Can I stay here for a little bit? Should she stay here for a little bit?
Sure.
For a minute.
She
If
can.
you're
Do we have
quiet.
Dali over there?
So that's my daughter, Sophia. So I think I would just encourage all of you to think beyond like the technical solution. Like, what are the technologies that we should be like, that we need to know? You already know this stuff. How could you use what you already know to advance the deep purpose and premise of what you're doing with students, and to use those things in a meaningful way that connects to what are the challenges that your students and you are facing, and making real change using those things in your classroom.
David, you are as exhaustive as you have ever been. Now I want Vishambar Dayal to put forth his question. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, sir. I am Vishambar Dayal from Jyotinagar School. Sir, my question is, home school is becoming popular these days. What is the scenario of home schooling in US?
Okay.
I think Brian may take this question, Brian.
I just want to clarify the question that you're asking, how homeschooling has become popular. Is that All right.
If it has.
I have not seen much for homeschooling becoming a popular option. Many of the parents who were home during much of the pandemic are starting to return back to work, and they are leaving the teaching up to the teachers at the public and private schools in the area. So I don't really see a lot of homeschooling coming into play. And most of the time they don't tell us if a student is going as a homeschool student. That's something they don't really address with the teachers as much as the administration. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Does. Probably, Brian, I feel this difference at your end because your children were all digitally connected to you. We experienced these problems of a digital divide also coming up in India during this long closure. Maybe that's why we have seen homeschooling becoming popular over the last 2 years. That's
I know
the sad part of it. It's sad.
I know that at one point Jo Beth, I think, mentioned in her chat about having parents see what teachers do while they were at home with their students when the students were learning remotely. That I think a lot of the parents have a better respect for teachers now and what we do in the classroom, and realize how difficult it is to keep kids motivated and to have them learning and doing homeschooling where they're not attached to a school anymore and they're responsible for the curriculum themselves. It's not an easy job.
It's not easy. I couldn't agree more on that. Parents have realized how tough a teacher's job is. I can see Bimla raising her hand. If she could tell us who does she want to address a question to?
Yes, good evening, everyone. As we know, students are back in school after 2 years delay. Now, my question regarding this, in our schools, we have launched different programs. One of them is reading campaign, 100 days program. Is there any such special program running there in your country? Please share any programs which our students can also take benefit from them.
Yeah, before someone takes this question, I'll give you a context to it to bridge the learning gap that we are experiencing for having the schools been closed for the last 2 years. Delhi government has come up with an initiative, not just Delhi government, in fact, Government of India has come up with an initiative of launching a reading campaign, 100 days program, trying to bridge the gap, like getting across to the children the minimum functional literacy and numeracy levels as suggested by a new education policy. Have you come up with something like that? Or whether you experienced any learning gap during this pandemic closure of schools?
I
can
think Joe
address that.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
So in my district in Massachusetts, there really hasn't been anything there's been no coordinated effort between any of the districts in the state or from the state to really add in some sort of program in to get the students back into motion. That the district has kind of said, hey, teachers, we understand that the students are coming back, ease up a little bit on the curriculum and ease a little bit more into it, especially last year when we had students return back into school in September of 2020. And we had students that were learning remote and in person at the same time in the same classroom. And we slowed up on the way we addressed our curriculum.
9 बजे इधर से निकल जाना है मैक्सिमम ध्यान रखिए इसलिए उस हिसाब से कितनी उठना पड़ेगा
Yes, Verma ji, if you could put yourself on mute.
जाना है ट्रेन है उनका
Verma ji, please put yourself on mute.
म्यूट कर देखिए फिर देखिए हाँ
So I'll continue.
Sorry.
We eased up on the curriculum a little bit. We didn't make it as aggressive as we normally try to get through all of everything. We took and focused more on the greater goals of the curriculum rather than the minutia and each curriculum step. We were fortunate that they did cancel the end of year exams for our students to ease that, with the understanding that the students, they're all going to have that gap, and it's easier to kind of say, hey, focus on getting the students back comfortable with learning rather than forcing them to learn everything that they would have in a normal year. And that has, it did ease them back in, but it still has caused a little bit of a learning gap, but these are kids and they're going to pick up on stuff and ultimately fill in those gaps as they move throughout the year.
Brian, did you just said that you will not go for assessment of the students?
We did in the year 2020, 2021, because our school year is September to June. We did not have assessments in that year we did not have our standardized testing at the end of the year.
So how shall the student be promoted? Is it that all of them are promoted to next?
We assess them throughout the course. Our standardized testing determines whether they can graduate high school. How do I explain? They have to take one series of tests in English, one series of tests in math, one series of tests in science in order to graduate high school. And beyond that, they also have to be successful in the course, taking the assessments of all sorts throughout the course. So they have to achieve certain grade levels within the course, as well as pass that test in order to graduate. They only have to take the test once in their 4 years of high school, that standardized test. So students will move on to the next grade if they complete the course, even if they pass the test or not. The test ultimately determines, do they get a diploma or do they get a, hey, you went through high school certificate at the end.
Thank you, Brian. That's a help. That's a help. You can see Anita Chikaraji with her hand raised. If she could give a brief intro and be with her question.
Yes, good evening, everyone. This is Anita Chitkara. I'm a high school maths teacher working with Delhi government. So my question is that as teachers world over, we have experienced technology like never before. It was a road less traveled, and now we all rely on this to a great extent. So how do you guys plan to make the most of this blended learning in times to come? Am I clear with my question, ma'am?
Yeah, I think, Joe, if you could take this question. Since we've moved to blended learning, how do you want to adopt it to your classroom? If you're comfortable with it? Or
Joe, you might try to take with your video off.
Is anyone able to hear me?
Not that well.
I'm sorry.
I think we'll pass on the question to Seth.
Yeah, the idea of, I think of blended learning has been, as we sometimes say, a long time coming. There are some teachers who have adopted it years before the pandemic because we are able to be flexible in some school situations to different student needs. Some students show up every day, have perfect attendance. That's wonderful. Some students have difficulty at home. They want to learn, they want to engage, but because of life, because of family, because of obstacles out of their control, they cannot come in. So some teachers for years have created online material so that those students can still keep up, because when the student comes back, they'll be extremely behind. And if a student has, interest, if a student has passion, they should be able to keep up. So for other teachers and myself as well, we've been doing some blended learning for years. So the COVID pandemic was actually a very smooth transition, or less terrible a transition compared to others, because we had a lot of materials. So I again would definitely be in favor of sort of smaller working groups to say, if we have to teach the following topics, let's get some materials available. And it has to go by the teachers and the schools, because some teachers will say, all my students are urban, so they all are local, which means they all have access to phones, they all have access to WhatsApp, they all have access to Google, but they do not have access to a large computer. And some teachers will say, my students come in from a very long distance where they have to share all the access, but they can read, they can have a print material. So there's not a, sometimes we use the phrase one size fits all, like a scarf. It doesn't matter what size you are, a scarf is one size fits all. I don't think in online learning, in blended learning, in any learning, there's one size fits all situation. But if we have teachers working together, we can say, well, one group has a similar population and they can work together. But yes, there has definitely been a lot more success with blended learning compared to before. But I am not saying blended learning or any type of learning is one size fits all. That is definitely not the case. But there are definitely online solutions that have existed and can continue to exist. If David would like to add to that, you can continue, please.
Yeah, Jo's also giving her inputs in the chat. She's talking about the advantages of the blended learning mode.
Good point. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't want to miss Joanne's points. Yes.
Yeah, because we're missing out on chat also. Yes, whoever wants to add to it. I can see Rakesh Semalti with her hand raised. If we could have the question from him. He's another head of school from a Delhi government school. Rakesh Semalti, if you please.
Hello, good evening all. Lovely interaction going on. Am I audible, Mamta?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
you are, sir.
It was a really nice interaction. Actually, I was on the way and getting all you. My question, rather my query, it is that pandemic, it has been a great teacher, and my question to all you guys in the States is that what is the takeaway out of this great teacher of this 21st century? What we learned and what we are going to take from this pandemic to our classroom and to the future generation, of course. My
Do we
question
have
is
David?
clear. Has my question gone across the sea, or I need to rephrase it?
The question has crossed the seas, sir. There's no problem.
It's traveling, it's traveling.
It's
I
traveling.
invite,
It's
I'm
landing
inviting
with
Brian
it's
to take the
landing with
question.
Brian, I think.
Brian.
Because we have Rajesh from Diet, so I think that Diet also has to digest this question. Okay.
So
Please.
your question is, what have we kind of learned through this pandemic? And my experience is Seth was describing about having a blended classroom, and I've had the use of technology in my classroom where I've been running through Google Classroom, et cetera, for 10 years before the pandemic even began. And the biggest takeaway I've had from this experience is the authentic interactions are so important for the learners, that when the pandemic came around and all the resources I had been using in my classroom were still highly applicable, I wasn't making the connections with the students. Yes, they were getting the content, but without the interactions of authentic experiences like doing labs, having group work where they are actually interacting more than just texting, because I found when I put kids in groups, all they would do is type in the chat, and they wouldn't actually talk in person through the camera or the screen. And having those authentic interactions with the content, with other people, makes the learning more enriching for them. And now that the students are back in the classroom and they're rebuilding those social skills, I see how important the technology is as a tool, but it's, as Seth said, it's only one part of the tool. And David mentioned before, those interactions enrich the whole learning for the students, and they take away more from just being in person. So I love the technology and I use the technology extensively, but having the people in the classroom it reminds me why we like to teach.
Thank you, Brian. Actually, you touched that social skills. So I think that we are going to take these social skills forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're already working on it. Could we have the next question from Avdesh Kumar Singh? He's been waiting for long.
Good evening, everyone. My question for Brian sir, I want to know difference between education setup between US and India.
Brian, you're in demand. And this is a big question.
Big question.
Mr. Avdesh wants to know the difference in education setup in US and in India. I think we can take this question to all the participants from US. So part of it you may address. Brian, please take it.
I'm still a little unsure of what the question is. I'm sorry.
May I elaborate? You've been to Indian classrooms.
Yes.
And you are practicing teacher in the US. Talk about one particular difference, and then like each one can contribute one. What exactly did you find different in Indian classrooms than what you have back home?
I think one thing that I found different, and my experience with Indian classrooms was different because, as David did, I also went down into Kerala and spent some time in the Delhi schools. The lessons I think that I focus on versus what I see in India is I spend more time having the students do discovery and researching a lot of things on their own, where it seems like when I was in India, there was a lot more teacher-directed lessons, which I do mix those in, but from my experience, what I saw while in my short time in India, I can't speak to your whole curriculum, was that I found that there was a lot more where the students are, again, more teacher-directed lesson where the teacher might be lecturing or doing something, demonstrations, where with my classrooms, I try to incorporate in more hands-on learning and discovery and inquiry-based skills, trying to have the students come up with the information on their own through experiences. That was one of the big differences I took away. And again, I only saw the Indian classrooms for a very short period of time, so I can't speak to all of your classrooms.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Could we have David on it? The same question.
Sir. Brian, sir, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Thank
David,
you.
if you could carry the thread further.
Similar to what Brian said, there's major pedagogical differences, but I think that stems from the premise of education. In India, I think that there's a huge emphasis on infusing character education into students to teach them norms, responsibility, harmony within the group, mindfulness, happiness, but also conformity, right? These are, I think, goals of the educational system. And because of that, there's pedagogical differences and kind of norms that foster those things. And I think because of that, in some respects, the use of lecture the use of, teacher-centered lessons that really, fill students with knowledge, but at the same time, like students are taking a back seat and they're meant to demonstrate knowledge based upon like specific concepts and skills that the teachers are, demonstrating. As opposed in the United States, I think there's more of an emphasis on a constructivist approach that gives students more freedom and individuality in learning, and that requires students perhaps to take more of an active role in learning and through the process of learning. And so, for instance, like in my class, we do a lot of debate. We have students move around the classroom based upon different issues. Like we do classroom caucuses or forced choice debates where students will have to take sides and debate, or students will have a lot of choice in terms of like ongoing long, either like yearly or semester long projects, which we're working on together, which I've talked a little bit about, and you can see examples of on the website that I gave you. And so those are pedagogical differences, but I think that those exist because the premise of education, in some respects, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also differences across our two countries.
Probably, yes.
Thank you very much, David sir.
A deep question.
Thank you very much.
Seth, if you could add to it.
I think thank you very much. I got the impression from students that they view the role of education very differently than many students in the United States. Many students in the West, especially in the US, think of education as optional to becoming successful. They look at celebrities, they look at athletes, they look at millionaires, and they say, you don't have to have an education to become a successful person. It's optional. I got the sense that culturally, the schools and the students that we visited in Delhi and in parts of India, they understand if you want to improve your life, if you want to become a very successful person, education is the pathway. And that's why the teacher is a celebrity. That's why the teacher has the standing, because the teacher is the one giving you the pathway to a better life. So the teacher is able to begin with that status. In the United States, the teacher is not always viewed as that status. So many teachers, like all of us, have had to figure out ways to make learning interesting, learning attractive, learning fun. I think all teachers are doing that anyway, but there's an extra pressure in many teachers in many urban environments where there's fewer students who are coming in, many rural environments where there's fewer students coming in, many students who say, I'm going to be in a different life, I'll be married, or I'll have to work a job, or I'll do something, so I cannot continue my education. I have to leave so I can go off into the world. Many of teachers in that situation will say, I have to be creative with how I sell education to those students. And that's where you get teachers who are very passionately creative with making special learning experiences for those students. So when I was talking with a teacher who was educated as an engineer in India, and he came to the US and he's now a US teacher, he was explaining that when he was learning science in India, it was all from the book. It was all theory and maths and formulas, and he didn't do experiments until he went to graduate school in the US, because there's no, I think they call it practical. There's no hands-on pressure. There's no pressure to learn hands-on. In the United States, many of our students will not be interested unless hands-on. So in science, in maths, in social studies, in many other areas, we learned as teachers, we will not be successful unless we balance the book and the practical, some hands-on. So I think that was somewhat of a disconnect when we were seeing some classrooms in India. The students were still passionate, they were still interested, they were still focused, even without the hands-on. Imagine how much farther they could go if they also had the hands-on as well as the learning.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you
A
very much.
pertinent observation.
That makes us too much optimistic, I think. So now I'm ready with one more video that includes your dance to say it. It's a mix of like 3-4 videos, a visit to school, another, okay, yeah, it's a visit to school and Said's dance and some thing. So this is to refresh us. So please stay for a while and then we'll start again this series of questions.
Can't see it, Rajesh.
Say that again.
Can't see. You've
can't
not
see,
shared
okay.
your screen. Yeah.
Wait. I shared. Wait.
No, you're out
Wait,
again.
wait. There should be something.
Should I try?
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
Is it visible now?
Right.
Okay. And sound?
Perfect.
Hi, Said, I want your comments on that. Could you recall that event?
Yeah, I think that was probably not when I was there in July. I think that might have been when I returned
In January.
in January,
Right.
and that was when Mamtaji's older daughter got married.
Exactly.
Blessings. I hope they're celebrating a lovely anniversary as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
that's
it was a
good.
fabulous experience. It was part of my increased global competency.
And David, why are you in the dark? Are you shying?
It's
Watching
bright.
yourself?
It's bright up. It's bright in New York City today. There's a lot of light coming through my window. Rajesh, I'm just waiting for you to tell the story of what happened to me from dancing so hard. I know that's like your
Really?
favorite thing to talk about, but
Okay,
it brought back a
so
lot. It was worth it, man, and it brought back a lot of amazing memories.
David, do you really want me to share that?
I'm not embarrassed. You can't embarrass me.
So okay, so Fox, what
That's
happened was
lovely.
that David, on that night when we returned from Agra, we arranged a musical evening at Hotel JP in Delhi, and there was this Bhangra group entertaining all of us and teaching Bhangra to our American folks. And what happened was that David Coate, he got overexcited and he nearly threw up. Oh my God. And that was kind of embarrassing for me too, but David said he did not feel embarrassing and he's not even feeling it now. Great,
I
David.
love
That
chai.
sounds
I love
good.
dancing, and that's what happens when you drink too much chai, and then you get really excited.
And we have your video, David, when you threw it up, but we didn't show it up on purpose. You might
Yeah, don't
actually
show
avoid
don't show
embarrassing.
that. That's
No,
just
no.
great, but it's
No, we
it's a
won't.
fun
We
memory.
We won't. But that's, that's a news for us that chai makes somebody intoxicated.
Great. So
Yes.
can we
Yeah,
again
let's
become
move ahead.
serious for a while and then we shall be
Yeah.
finishing it? So
Yes.
for some 3-4 quick questions, I want to call Charu Marwa to please come up with her question.
Hello everyone. My name is Charu and I teach social science to students of classes 6 to 10th. We all just saw a very entertaining video and previously we saw various pictures and it seems you all had a really great time visiting India. And we've also seen that you have visited various schools in Delhi, diet centers, schools for special children, and also other institutions during your past visits. And you have also been to schools across India in various other states, as Mr. David was saying previously that he is teaching in Kerala. So I would like to ask Mr. David, with all these experiences that you had, what is your opinion about students of India, school students in India?
David.
I was excited to go to school every day. I mean, I'm in India, also in the United States, so that's a similarity, I think, between our two countries and probably between all of us as teachers, regardless of where we are in the world. Like we are enthusiastic and determined and motivated to go to school or even to teach from home wherever we have to teach, because we care deeply about our students. But I mean, I absolutely loved it. It will be a memory for the rest of my life, the time that I spent in India. And I loved my time in Delhi with Mamta and Rajesh, but ultimately the reason why I signed up for Fulbright, and I encourage everyone to do Fulbright, it's not for a free trip. It's not to spend time sightseeing. It's not meant to be a sightseeing trip. It's meant to be an opportunity to be embedded in a school in a foreign country, in my case in India, and to be able to interact with students and teachers in a meaningful way for a meaningful period of time. And that experience is life-changing, and it's something that I'm going to hold near and dear to my heart forever. And again, I spoke a little bit about this. The thing that resonated, but I can't speak about it enough, the thing that resonated with me the most in India, first was the welcomeness. You know, I am a big fan of saying hello. Hello is a powerful word. I tell my students that every day. I make every one of my students say hello to me. If they're coming into class early, on time, or late, they got to say hello. start class with a smile and you know, a friendly demeanor. But I was just mobbed by students in India who wanted to just in terms of the outgoingness of India, even when I wasn't in schools, just crossing the street and people that want to talk to you and connect to you. The sheer fact that there's so many of you on this Google Meet, this Zoom right now, I think to me that typifies India, just in terms of the desire to connect, the friendly demeanor that people have, and that carries over to school. And I think it's really sustaining, and especially in times of tragedy and hardship, that's what schools need more than ever. And I'm happy to think that perhaps in India, you guys are dealing with the pandemic better, based upon just people's demeanors and their mindsets, and how I saw people treating one another in school. Gives me a lot of confidence, the fact that like you could sustain this trial and tribulations and others in the future. I think in my school, that's been a little bit more challenging in terms of dealing with people's mindsets, and just in terms of dealing with the struggles of life. I think my students and my staff have not been as successful in terms of navigating those challenges.
Chavi Gupta, mute yourself. David, we're touched by your observations. Yes, we work on minds and hearts. You've observed this rightly. I can see Sudhanshuji waiting for long. He's had his hand raised. Chavi Gupta, if you could mute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, Sudhanshu.
Hello, everyone. I am Sudhanshu, teaching English in DOE schools from 6th standard to 10th standard. And my question is that, what's the mandate and mechanism of in-service teacher education in US? So, can you hear me?
Chavi Gupta.
This is the reality of virtual world.
Ma'am, can I repeat my question?
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, I'm Sudhanshu from DOE and teaching English from 6th standard to 10th. My question is that, what is the mandate and mechanism of in-service teacher education in US?
Who would take that?
I can take that if you want.
Please.
It does depend on the state in which teaching happens. Different states have different mandates for their teachers. In the state of Massachusetts, we have to reapply for certification every 5 years, and we are required to take certain number of courses in pedagogy and certain number of courses in curriculum in order to meet that certification. And some of those courses are offered by the districts in which we work. Some of them we have to get from university. Some of them are offered by the state, and there are many education foundations in the area that will also will provide for us opportunities for those courses that we have to meet, and we receive what they refer to as professional development points for each course we take, and we have a certain number we have to hit in order to maintain our certification every 5 years.
Thank you, Brian. We also have regular in-service training programs for our teachers. Thank you.
So we have Dr. Rajni Hans with her question. Rajni, can you please come up?
Good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Rajni Hans. I am teaching Punjabi. My question is that, what is one thing in Indian school you observed which you like most?
Liked, okay. The floor is open. Who's taking? Say. The most. One thing.
Yeah, one thing.
We are at the fag end of the program. Talk about one
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, I think I said it. It was, or it was something I already acknowledged, which is something from the culture. There's something very clear about the culture in India or the culture maybe in just the East, because I hear about this from time to time in places like China and Japan, where they say the pathway to success is through education. So they see the teacher as holding your hand to the successful life. And it's a wonderful experience to be viewed as starting with not I am your boss, not I am here to challenge you, but I am here to help you get a better life. That's a wonderful thing. So when you already are beginning from that perspective, you can do so much to support your young people to get the life that they want to have, because you know that the students, the parents, the families, the people in the building, the people in the neighborhood, everyone around all understands you have the same goal. Just like the goal of a doctor, everyone understands, it's to make you healthy. People seem to understand the goal of the teacher is to make you successful. So if somehow we could transport that cultural idea to other places, then we could do anything. We could solve all the problems.
Touched. Thank you.
Said,
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Said, I have a very quick question. What is the age of retirement of a teacher in US?
In the US, it depends on the city. On average, it's about 60 years old, on average.
So is it compulsory retirement or is it?
No. Unfortunately, if you talk to every single US citizen, they will tell you a story about a teacher who has been teaching far too long and has no longer control of all of their mental faculties anymore. Some teachers stay in teaching probably a little too long, maybe because they love it.
Not
maybe
anymore.
because they can't afford to not. That's so. Yes. So David, yes. In
Not
50 years
anymore.
from now, we won't have those
People don't want to
stories.
be teachers. People don't want to be
It's true.
teachers in the United States anymore. One
It
out of
used to be-
50% of teachers are going
Yeah.
to leave the profession in
Yeah.
the first 5 years in the United States. No one wants to be a teacher in the United States anymore.
Things have
Nobody's
definitely
retiring.
changed
No
for the
one's getting to
profession in the
retirement.
last 20 to 30 years. Things have definitely changed for the profession in the last 20 to 30 years. But it used to be many teachers were able to teach very happily into 30 years of teaching. Some went into 40 or more years of teaching. But David is right that my estimation is, maybe David has a different estimate, roughly 20 to 30 years, the last 20 to 30 years, things in the teaching profession in the United States have definitely gotten much more challenging for teachers. And it's much more difficult for teachers to persist and finish a full career. It is much more challenging for teachers to have a full career in teaching.
And I think the pandemic has brought some of that on too, that we are so stressed from having to deal with all the changes so quickly and the expectations that people are putting on us, that we're seeing a lot more burnout from teachers that have been teaching for so long and have been amazing teachers, now just are, because of the remote learning, and for many of them having to change to using technology that they didn't rely on so much before. It's putting a greater stress on the teachers. And I've seen teachers that I thought were going to teach another 20 years retire recently because they just can't handle the stress. And it's not just the stress of having to teach, but having to deal with the stress the students are facing gives us even more pressure to we want to make sure our students are the best they can be. And with doing that, that puts a lot more stress on us when we see they're struggling even more because of the pandemic. So we're building up more of our own stress. And I think that's driving some of that early departure of some teachers from the profession.
So this is something interesting to me, and I wonder if there are teachers who can add into this conversation. In the last few years in the United States and plenty of other countries, there's been the phrase work-life balance, where we want to make sure we don't have too much work and we don't have too little life. We want to have a good night's sleep. We want to have good time with family, friends, and everything. When I was visiting some teachers in India, for me, it was very striking and surprising. Many of the female teachers said, I teach, then I cook every single meal, I clean, and I didn't say this out loud, but I thought to myself, when do you sleep? And when are you happy? And when do you have, obviously your family makes you happy. I don't mean it like that, but you must relax. When do you get to have your own choice of, when does your husband do the dishes? I didn't say this out loud, but it made me very curious. And I wonder if the concept of work-life balance exists, or if people see that as a luxury and that's something for other people and I cannot do that. It's something I'm curious about.
That's you've hit the point, hit the nail on the head.
So as we are coming towards the end of this program, one or two quick questions. May I invite Ritu Almari to ask her question, and Mamta, you can take one more and then we can wind this up.
Okay.
Ritu, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Ritu, and I am a language teacher teaching up to 10th class Hindi. My question is to know, how did you include drama in your classes during pandemic? And being a language teacher, I also wants to know what is your views. How can I improve my teaching to use drama in my classes?
I appreciate your question, Ritu, but I'm afraid, Joe, can you give it a last try? Because she's been having problems with her audio system network. Maybe she'll put your answer in the chat box.
Ma'am, I am
Joe, if
happy
you
to
are
see chat box.
Yeah, because she's facing some network issue. If we could have a quick question from Shivani.
Hi everyone. I'm Shivani. I'm science teacher. I have a question. That is,
Chavi Gupta, mute yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
No, please continue.
I wish to know how science fair is organized there. Science fair?
Science fair. Do you have that concept? We have science teachers here, if they could talk about, because I remember seeing the STEM fair when we were there. But the question is to you, please. Seth and David.
If Brian wants to add in, I can speak to it also. I'm not sure if Shivani ji is specifically talking about during the pandemic, which is when it's very difficult to perform science fairs, or if we're just asking in general about science fairs.
In pandemic also, and irrespective of the means when regular schooling is done in that portion also.
My experience with science fairs is very limited. Typically, for the higher level students, for class 9, class 10, everything before college, the students are so focused on those important courses for graduation that we don't have the time for external investigation on that plane. But there are plenty of schools where the students have to perform a large investigation as part of their final class. And there are some schools, honestly, my honest answer is it changes from school to school. I don't know if there's a whole state that all has a policy. There's certainly no national policy on doing this. But if a school values science, then they can easily say to the teachers and the students, if you're already doing projects, then give the students some time to showcase the projects. Invite the parents, invite the other students to see and be inspired by what you're going to do. If the school can afford taking not one day, only half a day, if the school can afford taking half a day to celebrate science, then all the students have to do is give a detail about your project and show the other students and be prepared to discuss with the other students. And the students get the message, the younger students get the message, the parents get the message, and people in the community can also be invited. They could get the message that science and learning are not just happening, but they're celebrated by the school. So I think it takes a head of school to make this kind of decision. It takes the science teachers and the other teachers to agree that this can be possible, but it's a celebration just like graduation, just to showcase the hard work of the students. I think if the head of school agrees that it's worth the time, then it can be a very rewarding experience, and it can make new connections for other people in the community and the family.
Thank you for the sharing, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sid.
Ryan, you want to add to that, or should I take one last question?
Yeah, I can add to that. I see science fairs as Seth said, it's unique to different schools and the districts. My sons, who are in a different district than the one I teach in their third and fourth and fifth grade years, they do a science fair where the students come up with their own questions. It's kind of an extension of the curriculum taught at that age group within that district, and they have a lot of fun with it. And they do the students come up with questions and answer the questions, and it could be as simple as right now my son's working on his science fair project where he's trying to figure out what kind of bacteria grow on your hands and what's the purpose of washing your hands, which is for a third grader, it's a great question. And so the main point of most of these science fairs is the scientific method and seeing how things are processed and giving the students like an opportunity to answer their own questions. As we move into the high school level in the state of Massachusetts, they do have a Massachusetts State Science Exhibition and Fair group that organizes the opportunity if a high school student wants to participate. And most high schools don't require a science fair, and a lot of the schools have what we refer to as a science club, where they have students who are greatly interested in science get together and do extracurricular science stuff. A lot of them may enter into a science fair, and there's a big display. They hold it at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and they bring in guest judges from major industries to come in and look at the projects and evaluate them and help the kids become more interested in the science and the whole process. So it's an opportunity for students who want it at the 9, 10, 11, 12 grade levels. So it, as Seth said, it does come down to what the different districts want and the motivation of the students themselves.
I think it's the epitome of what school should be. I remember very little from elementary school, but I remember my elementary school science fair. And I think that this is something that you could do for any subject or any content area. We do kind of action civics fairs for students to showcase that their activism and their civic engagement. It's basically the same thing, but this is what we're talking about. And I think this is what learning should be. Is it should be exploratory. It should be collaborative. It should be a way to showcase, students taking ownership of something, exploring it, sharing it with others. And it could be done in any content area. And so I think that's what makes learning real, relevant, relatable, rigorous, and relationship oriented is the concept of a learning fair.
Thank you. Thank you. No more left.
So I was thinking that when we are coming to end, our questions and answers shall be short, but they are going long and long. And we have too many people waiting in the queue to ask the questions, but due to the paucity of time, we can take one last question. So, Parvesh Bhaskar, can you come up with your question and a quick answer?
Hello, everyone. Actually, we are talking about students. I want to talk about teachers. Do we have some short-term online courses for Indian teachers run by US universities to improve our teachings, or to give more hands-on experiences to our students, especially in social science area? Because we have a lot of syllabus to cover, and we don't have the time to give hands-on experience on each and every topic. So if we have some courses, say short-term courses online for ourselves.
Pravesh, I think, yeah, David is answering in chat. He's already posted the link for it. If Seth wants to add to it, please.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to know about the social science especially.
Say it, can you, but as you are a physics person, but can you still take the question?
All I can add is just an appreciation for the links that David shares. I also operate under the expectation, under the pressure of a large amount of curriculum to cover, and it's difficult even when I go to a workshop to figure out how to adapt the ideas from the workshop, because most professional development will say you have to just teach it a little slower, you have to just teach it with more experience. And I had the exact same response. If I taught that way for all this material, we'd be here for 3 years and I only have 10 months. But if I have teachers in the same school, or if I have teachers in the same district that I can take the workshop together with, then we can choose together and decide, we're not going to do that for every topic, but what are the 1 or 2 or 3 topics that we really want the students to deeply understand, or that we really want a rich experience for them to take away something very powerful. I can't figure that out necessarily on my own, or maybe if I can, I have an idea or 2. So I would endorse, use any of the suggestions David or any of the other teachers use, but try your hardest to bring a peer. Try to bring a friend, try to bring 2 or 3, maybe from the same school, maybe from another district, similar students, so that you can go, you can take it together and you can collaborate together and say, that's all great, it won't work perfectly, but let's talk about how we can adapt it, what pieces of it, and let's not change the entire year. Let's just change one topic. Let's just experiment with only 2 weeks. So if it goes bust, it's no big loss. But let's try it a little bit. And then next year, if it went well, let's expand that a little further. And it's incremental gains like that. That's how most teachers make their changes. Not by overnight making a complete shift, but by little increment and using their peers to collaborate with.
Thank you, Seth. Yes, theory of marginal gains works, and collaboration is the key. And I'm really sorry. I feel like the session should never end. We have a series of hands still raised, but due to constraint of time, I think we'll have to bring our session to an end. But the participation, the enthusiastic participation is a signal that yes, we can move ahead with such ventures in the near future.
Yeah,
So
we
we
need to come up with the part 2 of the series.
Yes, it has to expand into a serial now, like with many episodes. We thought it is a one-time thing. No, this is just a beginning. So we'll definitely plan more of such sessions to engage our teachers, have them talk across borders. And thank you all for being here. And a special word of thanks to our TGC fellows who joined us on early morning of their weekend after a long, hectic week. And we look forward to having you again and again with us, and not just virtually. We wish to have you again with us here in India, in person, in our schools, with our families, with the community. experiencing all for yourself. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we really apologize that we could not accommodate more questions, but we'll share the emails of our fellows with you. If you want to be in touch with them directly, I think they'll appreciate it. They'll be very helpful to you, and we'll also try to organize such events in near future. So thank you everyone. Thank you everyone once again. Let's call it a day. Goodbye. You have a good day. We have a good night here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
Sid. Bye, David. Bye, Joe.
Bye everyone.
And bye, everybody.
Bye everyone.
Thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your day. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
You too, Brian.
Thank you. If we could all have a bye and a last screenshot.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.